live. Looks like everything is good. Try some clapping. Okay. Welcome everyone to the stream. Thank you for joining. I wanted to get this stream in. There's been a lot happening. So the last stream with the 3D Chameleon, we got things set up. We got two of the extruder motors set up. We got all of the tube and splitters and all that stuff, and then we tried to test print, and that's kind of where we left it. So what I'm going to do today is kind of go over, I'm going to recap what has happened since that video, since that live stream, show you what I changed, show you how I got it working, show you some of where we're at right now as far as printing goes, and then we're going to go, I'm going to set up the 4-color, just kind of, it's pretty much going to be the same thing. Got to set up a couple more motors. We do have to move some of the switches around, but during that time, I will catch up on chat and say hey to everybody. I know there's a lot of people in here already. Dan, Chris Galata, Travis, Sergio, Alan, just Michael Castells here. That's all the people that I see right at the moment. 3D Print Viking. I will catch up with you if you want to hang out here for the next 20 minutes or so while we get up to speed. So we're going to do that first. So we tried to test print. What was happening? There was a couple of things. So the first thing you need to look at is if Creality has switched for an Ender 3, of course, and it's going to be different for a lot of printers. But you need to look at first if Creality has switched around the extruder motor cable. So on mine, the 2 center wires were crossed, and you see 2 different types of motors. You see the ones that are crossed in the center, and then you see the cables that are completely straight through. The motors that they give you with the Chameleon are going to require it to be completely straight through, or they're going to be all spinning in the wrong direction. So we fixed that. I did show that we corrected that problem. But then after that, we had one of these motors still spinning in the wrong direction. And that is because I have an early 3D Chameleon kit. The new kits, the switchboards that they give you to switch the extruders, they allow for that. On the older kits, you had to switch your motor cable. So that was the first problem that I ran into. So I switched that cable, everything was spinning the right direction, because one of these turns clockwise, one of them turns counterclockwise, just to give you a little bit more room with a left and right extruder arm. So they're mirrored, so that you have more room on the top of this bar to load and unload filament and all that, which is fine. You just have to allot for that cable change. So I did that. I also pre-prepped the other cable for the other 2 extruders, so we have one straight, one crossed, or one flipped, actually. So that was the first issue. Then when we tried to test print, the filament was backing up. So it would, when it got ready to load, it goes through a load sequence, and then it would back up some. And what caused that was the start G code for the Chameleon for Prusa Slicer did not allow for cold extrusion. So by default, Prusa Slicer does a few things if you don't put the commands in the start G code, like heat up the hot end. It doesn't do anything with the bed, and as well as in G code. It doesn't shut the bed off. So you have to make allowances for that, and the start G code did not do that. It has been, I have worked with Bill on this, and it has since been updated. There's going to be another Prusa Slicer init file out with a lot of the changes that I made. We're going to go over some of those changes here in just a second. So before the extruder got up to the temperature it needed to get to, it couldn't load the start sequence. And that's the first thing that it does, is you put your filament on these Y adapters, roughly an inch above the coupler. Then it has a load sequence to make sure at least one of them is loaded. And then when the print finishes, it backs them out so that when it does the next load sequence, you should be good. But that load sequence is going to actually overshoot a bit, so it forms that tip the first time out, so you're hopefully successful. Well, the extruder wasn't up to temp in the start G code, so it couldn't perform the initial load. So that's why it always looked like it was backing it out. It would go to the tool change sequence. And the tool change sequence, the first thing it does is pull the filament out and then get ready to load it again. It does that same load sequence that's in the start G code at the end of the tool change sequence. So that's what that issue was. So moving on, the next one was the hot end tube. So this tube down here, so you've got these two Y tubes. You can't see it so well, but I'll show you later. But I also switched to Capricorn tube, but that was just to alleviate any issues because I know Capricorn's pretty consistent. I was just trying to rule out any problems, but I switched over to that. You probably don't have to, but I did anyway. So the tube that actually loaded from the bottom of the Y adapter into the hot end, the one on the first kit was only 75 millimeters long, and that caused the two couplers to meet, the one on the hot end and the one on the Y, and they were just a little bit too close for comfort. So I changed out, not knowing that that wasn't intentional, I changed out mine to a piece of Capricorn tube that was 85 millimeters, and I just updated the G code some. Well, turns out even the second kit that I have, it has an 85 millimeter tube. So that one was just a bit short. So that was the issue for that. I really didn't need to work it out in the G code. But the load sequence was way too long for that that shorter tube, and it was causing grinding on the filament. So there was that issue. Also, very important is the motor current, and these are higher impedance, I think is the correct word. What I'm thinking, so they're like 32 ohm or whatever. Bill can fill us in on that, but so they're going to require less current to get the same amount of torque, but that current adjustment is going to be very finite, and you're going to overheat if you don't get it correct. I actually did FLIR camera vision on all these to try to figure out when they got too hot and when that started to cause a problem, because the heat actually comes through the motor into this aluminum extruder housing, as you can imagine, and it's going to affect how it treats the filament. So I did a lot of testing trying to figure out what was the best path. That's why I went to this tube, to make sure there was no friction or anything extra causing extra work on that motor. So I tested a bunch of things. I ended up on this Ender 3 board, which, going from different multimeters, different boards, different power supplies, maybe they're not all exactly 24 volt, your mileage is going to vary. I believe 265 is the recommended reference voltage. 265 millivolts is the reference voltage from Chameleon. I ended up with 245, but that is a very conservative setting, and I'll show you more in the slicer. I actually slowed the print speed down, actually the volumetric speed, but we'll talk about that in a second, to make sure 100% I wasn't going to get any grinding. The filament wasn't going to get harmed in any way by the extruder motor spinning too fast, too much torque. I went really conservative on the settings. The prints do take longer, but the results that I'm having right now are actually pretty good. There's a few more tweaks. I kind of wanted to get to 4 color to see if I needed to make further tweaks for that setup before I went any further. There's a little bit of oozing here and there, but I don't really have to use an ooze shield. I can treat it just like any other single hot end multi-extruder setup. Just use a purge block. Everything works pretty good. Okay, so there's a whole lot of information. I know we're going into this guns blazing. I promise we're going to slow down. Hello everyone else in the chat, by the way. Bennett's here, Stephen Lightspeed's here, Robert Reynolds. We will hang out a little bit more, I promise. So now let's jump to Prusa Slicer. Now I'm showing you Prusa Slicer. You can use any slicer you want, but I know Prusa Slicer better, and I think it handles multiple extruders better than a lot of the other slicers that I've ever used. So I'm going to show you that real quick and how I tune the profile. And this is going to be probably pretty close to the profile you might get if you have this Chameleon setup, and it might be at some time the default profile that you might see. So let's jump there real quick, and then we'll get on with doing other things. Okay, so this is the test scenario that I usually set up for filament change to like tune. This is just a model I grab off of Thingiverse. But for MMU, palette, or whatever type of testing, if I want to test out the splicing or the filament tuning quickly, I'll just dump these numbered blocks in here. That way I know which extruder it is. I can see it do the wipe tower, all that good stuff. So let me just kind of break this down how I came about all this. So let's take a look at one of the extruders first. Now remember, this is a Creality printer. Creality actually uses like 12 millimeters of retraction by default, which is crazy. I usually use around 4.5 on an Ender 3, something like that, and I get pretty good results. Now with this setup, remember, I'm not just trying to keep the print from being stringy. I'm trying to keep the filament path from the model to the purge block and back, and then have to go hit the button and then come back. I'm trying to prevent stringing over a long travel period as well. So that's why I ended up with 8 millimeters of retraction. It's not just for the print. I'm trying to prevent oozing, so I don't have to use a shield. I really just don't want to use a shield. And you'll notice I use 80 millimeters a second. If you're set to Marlin, remember you have machine limits up here. These are in effect for a Prusa machine, basically. But they will work for other machines. You might have to tweak them a bit. But I used 80 millimeters a second, and the maximum feed rate is set to 120, so I'm allowed to use that. The only other change I made from a Prusa machine to an Ender 3 is I did lower jerk down to 8 from the default of 10. It just works a little better for this printer. So there's that. So I am allowed to use retraction of 80 millimeters a second. I am detracting at 50 just to make when the filament comes back down, just to make it a little softer so it doesn't impact any of my filament change, or it doesn't force the filament out and it augments my tip any. I just wanted to do it a little bit softer. I also wipe while retracting, trying to get just, if there's any sort of ooze or stringing, and I can try to rub it off on the infill or a little bit of extra movement before I move on. So there's that. So that's all the extruders are going to look like that. Now let's jump to custom G-code. I realize you're probably going to have to watch this back. If you're actually doing Chameleon work, you're going to have to go back and check all this out, because I'm just spitting this out as fast as I can. So, remember I told you we had this the extruder. I was hitting cold extrusion. So I swapped this stuff in here so it preheats both at the same time, the bed and the hot end, so that you don't run into that problem. So you're already up to temp before this G-code starts up. So you switch to relative distances for the extruder by default. That just means that you're not calculating the distance anymore. That means that if you tell it to move 100, it's going to move 100. It's not saying that I need you to go to step 100. You're just going to move that amount. Then we home, and then we jump off. This was another correction that we made in the start G-code. Then you jump off of that end stop 10 millimeters from X, from 0. And that is so that it depresses the button for the extruder changer. If it's depressed, if you leave it at home for 0, it's not going to work. It's going to be in a floating position, and it won't select the extruder. So that was another fix that we made. So now we're 10 away. The button's depressed. We're good to go. And remember, on Marlin and a lot of different firmwares, when you G28, when you go home to an end stop, you're going to double bump. It's called home bump. And default, you're going to move out 5 millimeters and then come back. So whatever color you were on when you started the print, you're actually going to hit that button twice. So you will be on that color, the same color that you started. And I'll show you that. I'll show you a little more on that as well. We're going to M84. I thought that was reset controller. Yeah. Okay. So M84. We're going to M84 shut all the motors off just to make 100% sure before we go switching anything that everything's safe and good. Then we're going to lift the nozzle and go out a bit. That's just a safety precaution. We're going to G92E0. That gets us back to an extruder setting of 0 when you're not using relative extruder distance, so that it knows where, if you want to start counting, let's say you want to go to 100, like we're getting ready to do. If you go back to 0, you know that you've started. Now you can tell it to go to position 100, and you will be there. There's no leftover values. And then the very crucial piece of this is the load sequence. We're going to do 100 at a time, and doing 100 at a time instead of doing it all in one shot, that gives you the ability to get around lengthy extrusion, which is also another safety feature like cold extrusion. So it's better to do it in increments. You can also control the feed rate and the speed this way. Now, if you have an 85mm tube like I do, which is the default tube for the Chameleon, I believe, and you set your filament around an inch away from the top coupler, we're going to move 255mm in total with these 3 moves. That's actually just a little bit long, but that's not a bad thing. But it's going to drive it into the hot end. You can actually hear it grind a bit. Depending on your setup, you could back this one out, just adjust it down a little if you wanted to. But I just left it at 55 because I find that extra movement, just making 100% sure that I have shaped that tip inside the hot nozzle and we're ready to start switching things out. Okay. In G-code, Bill set this one up for me. It wasn't unloading all of the, it wasn't turning off the heat bed, I added that, but it wasn't unloading the filament back into a relatively good position to start another print. Bill fixed that up for me, so that will also be in the package. It's really nothing. It's just basically an unload sequence to get you back to where you would be on a regular sequence. And then we go to tool change G-code. So this is where all the magic happens. And it's important to note, I think, that tool change in Prusa Slicer, when they do a tool change, they have their own magic. So if you tell it you want to go to tool 0 or tool 1, they're automatically going to bake in some movements to create that tower, and you can't control anything inside there. So you kind of have to dance around that stock movement with your G-code to be able to control certain things like retraction before it goes over to that block. That was the trickiest part to figure out, but this is how we did it. So basically, all of these are your movements, right? We're gonna back. So I've triggered a tool change. I'm done on my wipe tower. I need to get over to that switch and switch out my extruders, but first I need to back out that filament. So we're gonna go back to G92 and we're gonna set it at 0. We're gonna back it out 10, and this is the first change that I made. So before we move away from the wipe tower, we back it out 10. That keeps it from oozing on its way to the button. So then we head over to the button, and then when we proceed with the rest of our unload and cooling. We back it out, we push it forward a few times so that it's shaping the tip so it's ready for the next load, and as well as it's cooling it in the tube so it's hard enough to pull it all the way back out so it doesn't get all messed up when it's going through all these different Y adapters and all that good stuff. And that's why all of these different movements, all these are at -10, and we're coming back and we're going forward. We're resetting the extruder, all this good stuff. That's why it's happening. And these really aren't relevant to the load tube size. This is just basically, this will work for pretty much any Bowden length. It's more relative to the Y adapter from where the hot end is. So setting it with that E0, getting it back to 0, that allows you to count these steps. So it doesn't really matter as long as you don't get real crazy with the tube that actually goes into the hot end. You should be all set with these. It's more about that load sequence, and you'll see that at the bottom of this as well. So that gets the filament backed out. Then we disable the steppers so you can switch them. We put some messages up. Then we make sure, let's see, we disable. We're at 10, so this is multiple, so this is a whole bunch of if statements. If you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 tool heads, this does the different movements to get you to the left or the right. We'll experience that more after we have 4 on there. We set the fan because of the fan is actually going to be tripping the switches on the right. We will see that more as we add the 4th color. And then after all the unload is done, you have to load some filament. So we run through that initial start G-code load sequence again. Here it is, 100, 155. Again, adjust this 55 for your load tube. But then after that sequence, I am backing up -10 because I'm still setting over there by the selector switch, right? I'm still setting it X10. And I don't want to ooze filament when I'm going back to my wipe tower for my initial ramming sequence. And that's one of the things that was bothering me was this right here. So now the filament is at -10. We have reset the extruder to make it think that it's at 5 for just a bit of a safety measure. We're going to turn relative back on, so now we can call it with numbers. going to put out a message. Now, we're at -10 on the filament. So now it's going to head over to that wipe tower and start trying to print it. But the filament is 10 millimeters too high. So it's going to have to print a lot before it even starts using the filament. To get around that, you go into single extruder over here, this multi-material setup, and you add extra load distance. So this is going to add distance after the tool change procedure on the tail end of it. So that's what compensates for that -10 that we added in the start G code. So we're almost there. A little bit more information. So that's how I decided to configure it to code around some of the problems that I was seeing with oozing and stringing and all that good stuff, and it is working pretty well. Now, the other problem that I had was with this length of Bowden tube and the filament path and a Bowden, Bowden system whatsoever, it is a Creality machine. The Creality machines don't have the, we're going to go into filament settings. Actually, let's go into print settings real quick. We'll do speed. The Creality printers don't have the best track record with like volumetric speed. They can achieve some pretty high speed stock, but not the highest I've ever seen. For instance, like volumetric speed, like the maximum amount of filament that you can push on a hot end, like on a V6, they say it's around 15 millimeters cubed. In reality, it's usually around 11 or 12, just to give you an idea. Well, the Creality one is going to be lower than that. And you can set, for print moves, you can set maximum volumetric speed. This is the maximum amount of filament that you can kick out based on a speed change, and I'll show you that on the next page. But so we have all these speed settings. It's going to calculate that maximum for you. But if you want to set all these speed settings and then set a cap for that value, you can do that right here. The caveat of that is this does not impact your wipe tower, which it should. I mean, it should treat. I would think it would treat the wipe tower like support material, and it does not. So I just left this at 0. I'm using all of these speeds to calculate that, but I am capping it. And then we head to filament settings. So if we head to filament settings and we go to advanced, you'll see I have the maximum volumetric speed set to 3.5. Underneath that right here, it's going to give you all the information based on those speed settings that we just saw in print settings, how it calculates your volumetric speed. You can see at those speed settings that we were using, the volumetric rate right here is 407 for certain types of move. That's infill. That's 60 millimeters a second. This is how it calculates millimeters cubed, how much filament, based on the filament width, all that good stuff. You can go to 407. 407, again, I'm going really conservative. We could probably achieve 407. I wouldn't want to try to do 7.54 down here, external perimeters and all that. We could probably achieve that 407, but I was getting a lot of clicking, a lot of inconsistent extrusion with the setup that I have, so I decided to go extremely conservative and cap it at 3.5. It is fairly slow with all the filament changes and things like that to print, but the prints come out really well, and until I'm 100% sure and happy with the print quality and all the tweaks that I've made, going into 4-color and this whole setup, how this all pans out, I'm going to stay at these settings, and then if we want to ramp up from there, we can. So that is how I have configured the Chameleon to work the best for me. So that was a whole lot of info. Let's go back to this for a second. And let's take a look at some of the tests real quick. If I can get some focus. So I know we usually don't go through, like learning things on live stream, but I felt we really needed a recap from what happened last time. Okay, so this was our first test. This is how it came out. This guy right here. Not great, but also I think that it printed on a raft, by the way. But also, I think there were some problems with that STL. There's another version of it out there that doesn't have as many gaps on it. But, the print still completed, so that was no big deal. But I really didn't start seeing issues on the prints until that extruder motor started to heat up. Then I started to get a lot of clicking and such. And then my next most successful print was this guy right here. And the dual color Benchy is not easy for any dual color setup. It's I mean, there's a lot. You can see the stuff around the wheelhouse door there. That stuff is kind of hard to hit. It's hard, especially to hit it accurately. So it did jam before I got to the smokestack. I had to do some more tweaking on that. But I mean, we were getting there. I did a lot of tests to get here, by the way. And then I ended up with this guy. And I had a lot of color bleed because I shouldn't have grabbed that red color. I knew I shouldn't have done that, but I had some color bleed, and there is just a bit of oozing every now and then. And that is oozing from when it hits the button going, and it's kind of based on where you have your wipe tower placed. I had this one, I had the wipe tower like kind of right here. So it would grab the wipe tower, start to print, and then occasionally it would kick some into the model. I have since moved it back to the default location, which is like somewhere over in here, and it has improved it quite a bit. But this is probably the best one that I've seen so far, and we've only gotten better. I have made a lot of tweaks since this one, and it's only gotten better. I haven't completed any more prints except the one that's on there right now, which that's what we're going to look at next. I should have brought some water. I'm doing a lot of talking today. So this was my last attempt. So I did mess up the wipe tower a little bit. You can see this stuff here. So when it goes over to hit the button, and then it does its sequence, it still has just a little bit of a tail, which we were talking like maybe we need a bucket or a brush or something like that to keep it from doing that. I still might be able to G-code my way out of it. I haven't ruled that out yet. But on its way back to the purge tower, whatever you want to call it, you can see them collecting there just a little bit. And that's actually the piece, when I had the tower over here, that's actually the piece that was getting stuck in the side of the Benchy. But after a few more tweaks after that, moving this guy around, you can see our two numbers. I do have a little piece right there, and I'm not exactly sure where that came from. I didn't watch it. And that's another thing about this. You just have to watch the thing. You have to sit here for hours and watch it to print to figure out what it's doing. But these came out pretty clean. Not bad at all. So with all of that, we've seen it all. I am ready to go to 4-color. Bring on the pain. But now that the G-code's all lined up, the Prusa Slicer config and everything like that is ready to go. It's just rinse and repeat because it's a tool change G-code. It does it every tool change. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 through 4. It should all be lined up exactly the same. I am a bit curious because we're going to move to the left to trigger which bank we use, and then we're going to move to the right. I'm a bit curious about what the filament path is going to look like if we need to make a few tweaks there to allot for that. We really shouldn't, but you know, things change. So there it is. That is 2-color. I've been working on it just a little bit over a week. And now we're going to go to 4-color. So 4-color, everything is going to be pretty much rinse and repeat. I've got to put together 2 more motors. I do have to I have to take out this Y pipe, stack a 4Y pipe on it. I'm going to use the couplers off of that one. And we have to add a couple more switches over here. And I will show you how all of that is configured. We have to build these 2 motors, which they're built exactly like these 2. And I will show you how all those switches link up, how they work. And hopefully by the end of this, we will have 4-color printing. So there we go. Yeah, that was a lot of troubleshooting. So, thanks everybody for joining the stream. How is everyone doing today? We will get started building now. I'm just going to start by putting together some motors, hanging out and reading the chat a little bit because I know I missed a ton. But how's everyone doing? It's Tuesday. Monday's over. That's always good. Chris Lane is here. James over at Print and Place here. And I've said this before, but remember on the Chameleon kits, they're just 2-color kits. It's the same kit over and over and over. So the 2-color has enough parts And if you get another 2-color, you have enough parts to make the 4-color kit. They're all the same. $100, $50 a color. So that's how that works. Yeah, motors. I'm just gonna put together some extruder arms here. We can kind of, I mean, I'll throw these on the camera if you'd like as I build them, just to show you what I'm doing. It's probably not super interesting, but we can do that. There's really nothing up in that corner that's worth seeing anyway. Now, this was like a week ago, so now I have to remember how to do things. I guess I have this whole setup that I could just look on now, but need some wrenches. So what's the maximum color possibility? Well, you're really only limited by how many switches you could find locations for, because it doesn't know anything about the extruders, right? 32 is the maximum in Prusa Slicer. So, you know, you could really get after it if you had the time and the patience. I kind of wonder how long it would take to slice a G code with 32 color. Would that take longer? I mean, I know it's a lot of extra G code and such, but I would guess it would take longer. So is this one? Which one's this one gonna be? Yeah, I got that correct. Don't forget the motor bracket. Yes. I'm way too ahead of myself after that thrilling conversation we had about slicing. You should do the motor bracket first. Where are my... There we are. Sergio, thank you very much for that $20. Much appreciated. And another one of these cute little blue guy sticker things. And for 32 color, it might be faster to paint. I guarantee it would be faster to paint at that point. At the slow settings that I'm using, I'll just tell you for reference. The settings that I'm using with that 3.5 MVS, that 2-color benchy takes about 7.5 hours. That's like something like 180 tool changes, which is kind of a lot. But just to give you an idea of what it took. How do you know if you have high impedance? Well, I always go look up the model numbers. I don't know if there's a certain character on these. These are specific motors for this. But I always go try to find the model number and the data sheet. You're not going to see them very often. You know, on regular, 3D printer setups. That was right. Do I still have a hang printer? They're 36 ohm motors. That's the number I keep forgetting. I keep wanting to say 32. Kyle Davis, thank you very much for the $2. That's a cool upgrade. I have been in contact with K3D. They have kits to convert Ender 3s over to Core XY. So we might actually see one of those at some point. I'd like to see a splitter for 32, no kidding. Do I still have the hang printer? I do. I don't use it. I haven't used it in a long time. But it is still over there on the ceiling. It is just low enough where if I'm walking through there at the at the right pace, at the right if I'm standing up nice and straight, it will clip me on the top of the head occasionally. So I do still know it's there. Yeah, it's over there. If I had a free afternoon, I could probably get it up and running relatively quickly, I guess, if I really needed it. Because I just wound up all the anchor points and everything. I just let them wind up on the spools and just left them set there. So it should all still work theoretically. Painful reminder, yeah. Bennett, you've never seen a hang printer? I find that hard to believe. Um, hang printer is basically a Delta printer, but instead of using arms, you use fishing line. I really wanted, now that we don't go to Murph or for anything like that, I really wanted to coordinate with somebody to bring one just to get it, because you don't see them out in the wild ever. There's really only a handful of people that have ever done it. On YouTube. There's a lot. I know for a fact there's a lot of college kids that do it for their thesis and such, because they contact me asking me questions all the time. But I really wanted to try to coordinate bringing that somewhere to one of the shows, but it's just such a pain. It would have to be. I don't really know how I'd get it all there. It would be a real chore. Treaty Medic Vince is here. What's up? Yeah. Tom and I always mess up. Torbjorn, I believe is how he officially. I always throw an extra e in there or whatever. He built it with the guy that kind of created and commandeered it, or put the whole thing together. Him and his buddies did it. But yeah, they built one at Trinamic, which is a cool set of videos. They're fairly long, but a cool set of videos. Hang printer trailer. We have kicked around like storage container hang printer. That would be pretty sweet. You really do. You need it in a really isolated environment. On more than one occasion, I have been printing something and the dog come running through, and that did not do anything well for the print. So you really need to kind of have an isolated environment to run one of those in. Yeah, the hang printer bar stool. Yeah, it didn't make it very far. It's a goner. I still have aspirations of doing something with it at some point. I really wanted to move it outside, like use it in my shed or something, but it just requires so much room. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll get it back out. There is another version of it, and I was kind of interested in testing that version because it's very unique. There's one that actually has vertical drums, what I like to call them drums, hubs, instead of the flat ones. I'm not sure that it is 100% complete yet. I don't know the status of that one. Are these the same? No, they're not. But it looks pretty cool what he's done so far. He also had one that the latest version that I saw him using, he had closed loop steppers, which would make things so much easier. That's the problem with the hang printer, it doesn't know where home is. So you kind of have to eyeball that with a ruler and tape measure or whatever. That's the most daunting part. But then he was able to get closed loops working. I guess he could get calibration down to just a couple of minutes, which is very impressive because it takes a long time to get set up ready to print. You think you've seen everything now? Oh man, there's so much cool stuff out there. It's still spin. Robot Hut. John, what is up, man? So there's our first one. So we have this guy, and then I'm just checking myself at this point. There's this guy. I want to put them inside. I don't know why I like them on the inside, but I don't know. Seems a little cleaner to me. Doesn't really matter. But that's the way I'm going to do it. Okay. Silicone sheets. Adam Green. Thank you very much for the $3. Much appreciated. Yeah, so whatever they got CAN bus or whatever on that thing. That would be really cool to see them offer that type of environment out of the box. There are a couple of companies. I believe Big Tree Tech is one of them. I'm pretty sure they are. I couldn't get a hold of them, but they do have little controllers, pretty simplistic controllers for a relatively low amount of money for closed loop. Haven't gotten my hands on one, been able to test it yet. But it would be kind of interesting. That would take you into kind of a different world / direction, as a lot of things. And again, I'm just repeating. If you have a chameleon and these videos are to help you out, check out the first video. I'll put all the links and all that good stuff to all the other videos because I'm just repeating the same exact thing that I did in the last video. For the last live stream. Really, the only thing's different today, I'm going to rebuild this Y section to go to a 4, and then I'm going to set up these other switches, and I'll show you all that good stuff a lot better than this stuff. Yes, we've been working on this back and forth, Bill and I, for at least a week. Because last Monday was the last stream, I think. And I think we've made some progress, so I'm anxious to see how 4-color goes. Reasonable to get something like closed loop on an Ender 3. I mean, it's really not. I mean, I really don't know what benefits you get out of it. I guess if you could code something or come up with something that was more fault tolerant, closed loop would definitely be the way to go. but without a lot of programming and you know all that kinds of good stuff, I don't know that you'd get really any benefit out of it. If Marlin goes that direction, or there's another firmware that goes that direction, then sure. But there's going to be a little more to it than just slapping them on, unfortunately. I guess there would be a handful of things you could do. Cool. Yeah, super overbuilt Bear i3, exactly. If you couldn't think of one more thing to put on your Ender 3, sure. I don't know that you can ever run out of things to put on your Ender 3. I want to see the most expensive Ender 3 out there. That's my goal. Who has spent the most money? Stacker F1. You know, I don't know much about it. That name seems familiar. I know. Well, no, you know what? I saw a picture of it. Aren't those like design? They're like pointed at schools and things like that. They're like they have kind of a different market. I don't know if they have a support model. I don't know much about their company or what they do, but their design is somewhat unique. But yeah, I really don't know much about the company or what they're doing. Okay. Huge Motorhead fan. I'm still not over Lemmy's death. I didn't figure he'd ever die. I'm a huge Motorhead fan. Okay, so we have 2 extruder motors built. I'm getting pretty good at these. So those, again, those are exactly the same. Here is 1/2 of our Y, and then you get half of it in each 2-color kit. And there is the other half. And then we use the parts off of our 2-color to build the 4-color. We'll take this off. Good old Lemmy. If you're a metal fan at all, and you kind of like watching documentaries and stuff, there's actually some really good documentaries on Lemmy, you know, and like the Rainbow Room and things like that. Check them out they're like free on Amazon. I know there's a lot of good ones out there. I've watched a handful. Sergio got this. So Sergio and I have been kind of, he's been my watcher on YouTube notifications just to see if they actually come out. So I always ask him, I always say, hey, I'm on a stream, see if you get a notification. And he got one on his phone this time, but it's not always very consistent YouTube notifications. So I apologize for that. So we're just going to take the couplers out of the 2, and we're going to populate the 4. I don't need one in every one. Pick a side, stick with it. Don't do them upside down. And this guy will just sandwich on here. And then we have some self-tapping screws. Put it together. I think it's kind of funny on the notifications that, so we got 3 like that on that side, and we'll flip it over and do three the other way. I think it's kind of funny that I get an email like 30 minutes after I go live announcing that I'm live on my own channel. I think that's kind of comical. But I guess, you know, that's a good safety measure in case somebody else is trying to be live on my channel. I'll know 30 minutes later. Like that. 3 and 3. No, these are injection molded, it appears. They're pretty hard. I don't know if that's acrylic or what that's made of, but they are not resin printed as far as I know. Polycarbonate injection molded. Thank you. Okay, so this one is built. We can go ahead and just put that on. Let's see, is there anything else you need to see on the table? Well, let's put together our switches here. So we're gonna end up with 1 on this side and 2 on this side. And how this works. So right now you just have on and off basically for left and right extruder, right? That's how you go over there, tap the switch, kick on 0, kick on 1. In a 4-color scenario, you have 1 over here and then 2 over here. This switch now will decide which bank you want to use, and we're going to wire it up differently. So that one, when you tag that one, that will decide, do you want to use one of these 2 or one of these 2? Then these 2 switches over here will decide which one of those 2 you would like to use. So you're going to go tag left, tag right to switch whichever one, and then you can start printing with that color. So you're going to have 2 of these switches over here kind of facing each other in these housings. And I'll show you a bit more on that. For people doing this, for the kids playing along at home, there are different sizes of Ender 3 screws. These actually go on the right side of the X axes. I will show you that. Don't get sick. These screws right here, these are different sizes on different kits. So what they have done is they've made these the smallest possible so that you can ream these out or drill them out if you have the larger screw. This is for the smaller screw size. This printer has the larger screw size. I drilled mine out to 7mm. They're a little less than 6mm by default. I went up to 7 on mine, and it fits pretty well. So we're going to use that one. Again, you get one of these in each colored kit. And then you have the other one that does not have the holes on it that goes on the front that holds another switch. So the switches will set in like so, like that. And you'll use a couple more of those self-tappers, get it in frame, to hold those down there in the front. So I'll put that together. These are actually the really small self-tapping screws that come with the kit. And they're actually really small. Jerry from 3D Printing and Painting is here. What's up, Jerry? Mad Mike is here. What's up, Mike? Sometimes magnetized screwdrivers are awesome, sometimes not. Oh, lol. Hey, Paul, thank you. Thanks for joining, and thanks for the $2. I appreciate that. Stevie's here. What's up? Sure, I missed some more stuff. Oh, MakerBee came in. Yes, we were just talking about notifications. Definitely, if you're working on your Chameleon, definitely go back and watch the beginning of this stream, because I went over all the tweaks that I made to the slicer profile. I know you said that you had one, so go back and watch the beginning of this one if you need more information on slicing and how I came about what I did. And I know I went over that. People accuse me of being way too fast in the videos. I know I went over that very quickly, but it is a live stream after all, and we have things to do. Let's set up and work on Prusa i3 Mark III style. So somebody asked that the last time. Thank you, Andre, for joining us. You would have to work out some sort of mechanism to deal with the direct drive. So this one is kind of designed around the Bowden tube going all the way to the nozzle, the Creality style machine, and that's how it enables it to transition in and out of that Y pipe so easily. It's somewhat like the MMU1, the old Prusa MMU1, and they actually switched out the whole top half of their hot end carriage to allow for this type of thing. I don't know exactly how their Y system worked. I've never seen one up close, but it's kind of similar. So you would have to figure out some sort of sequence. You'd almost have to get it to work really well. You'd want to like bake it into their filament sensor so that when it saw it, it could stop the machine. That would be a lot of coding and figuring things out. But it could be done, but it probably wouldn't be the easiest thing in the world. There'd be some custom stuff to do. I don't know anybody that's done it personally. So, 2 switches are in here. One is going to support each bank of motors. And then that other switch is actually going to go into the center. I'll show you that. But they fit together like this. And then this side goes towards the x-axis. And you can put them together, which we're going to do next. You actually put these together with the stock screws that go on the X carriage over here that we removed when we put the first 2-color switch on, the stock Creality screws. And I have those, I think. I do. Yeah, okay. And then we'll go through here. I can get them lined up. And then we'll just mate them on the other side with some M3 nuts. But first, I'm going to put the wires in there and get them zip tied before I close this up. Yes, agreed. MMU2 would be a ton less work. Slow-mo, there you go. It'll be more soothing in slow-mo. Okay. Let's see. We really don't need to take... Let's get the wiring correct. Let's go ahead and throw the motors on and stuff before we continue with any of this other thing, so I can kind of get the layout of what we're going to do. Let's kind of put you up like this. So let's set these guys on here. I try to get, Dan has a lot of streams. I try to get to streams as I can. A lot of times I don't have time to jump into the chat, but I do jump in occasionally, and I will make a point to do that. Any cool plans for the time off? Not really. Just kind of taking it easy a little bit, not having so many deadlines. Like this Chameleon. I had the time to just sit here and, you know, print with it, watch it work. You know, the stuff you actually kind of enjoy doing, tuning. So I'm going to get a lot of stuff like this done during the break, where I don't have to have the table cleared to make the next video and all that good stuff. So mostly that stuff, which I'm looking forward to. But you know, I like to tinker just like everybody else does, but a lot of times I don't have the time to do it. It's just a little more free time. We're going to be doing a lot of streams. I have a lot of building to do. So there is that. So I'm going to remove these two motor wires. I am going to remember which one is the flipped one. And it's this guy. I'm going to mark that just so I know. Andrew, thank you for the sub. Info Mario, high five from Spain. High five, man. They are Capricorn. I replaced these tubes with cap tube, and I wanted to give you kind of the idea of my layout here. So, again, while testing, I was trying to rule out any constraint whatsoever on the filament, and that's one of the key things, especially when you're dealing with multi-extruders. You have to rule out any friction whatsoever to pull the different end and do ramming and all that good stuff. So what I did was I went with cap tube because I know it's super consistent. I'm not saying that this stuff that comes with the kit isn't. I know this one is, so I can rule it out. Also, my idea was I had them kind of crisscrossed before, and the radius on it was just, it wasn't super high, but maybe a little higher than I thought it should be. So my idea going forward, I'm going to use these two guys going in this direction, and these two guys going in this direction, and then kind of zip tying them in the corners. That way I get a nice long radius bend, and I'll be sure that I don't have any drag. So that was the idea with the cap tube and this setup that I have going forward. Again, we're still in testing phases here. I don't know if that's the best way, but that's the way I'm going with right now. Okay, so these two guys, I know I keep saying guys, these two wires that are coming from this switch right here, you're not going to be able to see this very well. So the ones that I just took off the two motors for the two color setup, these have the motor side cable plug on there. I'm just going to run these underneath the hot end wires and the stock Bowden tube that I didn't take off and all that stuff, because they are going to go into the wire housing that's over here. I'm going to throw some zip ties and stuff on here to make sure the wires are clear, but they're going to go in this housing that goes on this side. Those, and I could show you a close-up of this, I guess, but it's not, so I'm just going to plug them in, and then we're going to have to kind of figure out which one went where, and then we can control that in the G code or by the sequence of switches. I want to put markings on the front of these to say, okay, this is how you get to extruder 0 by hitting this switch and this switch, and it's going to be a little more obvious when we get the 4-color setup. But so on the one that goes in the back, on the X carriage, I'm just going to arbitrarily take this one, and I'm going to make that one the one that has the flipped cable on it. And then the other one will be the straight cable. And they go in the center, the one that has 6 pins on it. So now that I have one, so that one's flipped, I will still need one flipped one that I created on this side. It doesn't really matter. I will have to switch them and figure out which one needs to turn, the correct direction, but we can figure that out. And then, actually, it would work much better if that other one was a straight through. Doesn't really matter, I guess. If both of these coming from that switch were straight through, then I could predict which one was going to turn the correct direction. Which way do I want to do that? Because if I don't do it that way, I have to have two flipped either way. So that's what we're going to do. So we're actually going to take this one off real quick. They're not real easy to, or they're not really difficult to take apart and put back together. So that's a good thing. Trying to avoid that. Clippers, clippers. So we still have the stock extruder wire coming into this switch. So then I'm going to use a straight cable. Remember, I have two flipped. I'm going to use one of the cables that are straight through. So now both of the cables that will power essentially these other two switches will be straight through. Because these two switches are going to control the motors. And then this one can go back on. That will make things just a little bit more simple. In my mind, anyway. I guess that's really all that matters. Okay. It'd help if I got all of the wires under the zip tie. Okay, so you have motors that go backwards. So both of those motors go on the switch that with the flipped cable. But so here's what I'm thinking, Bill, and tell me if I'm wrong. So if I had I've got two straight cables. I am powering these switch banks with those straight cables. So I'm coming from the extruder, two straight cables to those switches. Now, when I switch in between those two banks, those two switches, I would still need one straight cable and one flip cable on each one of those switch banks because of the left and right motor, right? So I go to one switch bank, I would have a flipped cable and a straight cable. And then the same over here, a flipped cable and a straight cable. And that would officially compute out with these switches to the correct direction. Or am I thinking incorrectly? No. Are the switches adding are the switches adding a direction that I'm not thinking about? And I guess that's, but it requires two flipped cables, right? So if I did it with one cable, but then both of these would be turning in the, I guess you could use the two lefts and the two rights instead of doing left, right, left, right. Okay, I got you. So if you went, to continue my train of thought, if you went left motor for one bank switch and then right motor for that other bank switch, then you wouldn't need two flipped cables. You could just use the flipped, powered. One is flipped, one is straight. I have them staggered left right, so I'm going to use two flipped cables. Honestly, I think personally, using it, I think the left right leaves you a little bit more room maybe than having it sandwiched. I don't know, it might not matter so much. But it's not going to really matter. It will work both ways, but you will have to flip two cables. So hopefully that makes a little more sense. We'll go over that one more time after this is assembled, so I can show you 100% on the camera what I just said. Because a lot of times I say things and don't understand it, so okay, yeah, Bill does have, he's got a wiring diagram that shows it all set up on that video, which I will put all the links in these videos as well to Bill's videos, because he does walk through this in a video. I was just making extra sure everybody got it by doing this, because I was going to build it live stream anyway, so I tried to make it somewhat educational. Okay, and then we've got that. What can you actually see? So now I've got one, so can you see the extruders in this? Push this one back up a little bit. Okay, I've got one straight cable, one flipped cable coming from this side of the switch. I have a left-right extruder. So basically right on the two, I had one flipped, one straight cable, so that these would turn the correct directions. I'm going to have that same exact setup on this side too. So one flipped, one straight cable. But both of the cables that power these switches are now straight, so that these switches now decide which one turns which direction. The cable actually is deciding which one's turning which direction. But what Bill was saying, if you wanted to use one straight, one flipped, and then have all the rest of these be straight cables, just do two lefts, left, right, and that would make it work correctly. So it should work the same no matter what, however you want to do it. I don't know. Like I said, after I use it for a while, I might want to flip it. But right now, I think that order makes it work. I don't know. So on the switches, well, before we do that, let's wire these up. So on my first one over here, extruder 0, I have a straight cable. And remember, on the newer models of this, the switches handle this for you. So you don't have to mess with all of the cables and such. I'm actually going to move this a bit. Yes, it is cap tube. I switched it out to cap tube. I know I marked here's my flipped cable. So on the next one, I'm going to do flipped. And these two motors will go on the switch that's behind, the one that's up against the carriage, the one with those mounting holes in it. And it really doesn't matter so much which one goes where. I mean, we can figure out after the fact which switch gets triggered and triggers which motor. But I'm going to do the far one, the 0. I'm going to do that on the P1, the white plug. And then the next one, tool 1, P1, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to do that on the black plug. So those are in there just like that. So we've got that part. Now the next one, we'll get a straight cable. Tool 2 officially. And then the tool 3 is my last flipped cable. I got lots of cables. Here's my last flip cable. And those will go on that front switch. I'm just going to try to keep consistent here. Tool 2, I'm going to put on P1, the white one. Tool 3, P2, the black one. Just like that. And I'm going to straighten these up a bit before I assemble it. Four color prints, that's right. Will we see an update on the 3D printer fix-up series? Yes, you absolutely will. That series actually took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. I've been working on renditions of printed parts to fix that machine for a long time now. I thought it was going to be a bit easier, but then I decided to kind of go the custom route and create all the parts from scratch, and it's been taking a while. So, Ahmed, thank you very much for the sub. It's appreciated. So, it's coming. We have a very full schedule. We're going to hit the ground running in a couple weeks here. We have a lot of content to get to. So, we have put these two together. They sandwich together. Hopefully, and they're cut just so that you can sandwich them together. That is quite a bit of wire in there, but you can do it. And then using those stock Creality screws that we took out in the last live stream, we're going to put them together with an M3 nut on the back. And there should be a bunch of those running around everywhere, all over this basement. Yeah, so the week off's going really good so far. I don't have the stress of getting that video out like I do most weeks, so it's going good. It's been super, super hot, so really can't do much outside, and you know we can't go anywhere really. So, but lots of relaxed time, getting to work on things at your own pace. When you do YouTube content, you kind of start missing that, where you can't just do things, on your own time. You kind of got to rush some stuff. So it's good. I always take the summer break off because I like to work on a few projects here and there just whenever I feel like it. And I thought the Chameleon was a great one to start with because, one, I've been meaning to put it together forever. But two, I figured we were going to have to do just a little bit of tuning to get our prints to look good. So it's a good one to start with. We do have, I will tell you, if you are interested in Chris Riley streams, next weekend I have all kinds of stuff coming up. So next weekend into next week, I will have a lot of stuff we got to get built. And there's a couple of new printers that I was supposed to unbox a long time ago that I should do. So look out for that. I will try to get them scheduled and keep you updated as much as possible. Greg is here. What's up, Greg? I haven't seen you in a while. BL Touch with this upgrade. The printer fix-up upgrade? Sounds a little short. I have to remount that pole just a bit. Lots of content to keep you busy for the next 6 weeks. Well, I will try to do my best to help you out with that. Good luck on your surgery. We hope for the best. That's right. I got hooked on the chameleon when I was at Earth. You know, it's one of those things, too. Me, personally, I think it's relatively inexpensive for what you get, compared to a lot of the other multicolor options. But it seems so simplistic. I really enjoyed watching it work. It's designed to go, like, right on a stock printer, which is cool. So I really like the way it was laid out. I definitely want to I definitely wanted to get involved with it. I wish I could have gotten involved with it a lot sooner, actually. But I'm having fun. I enjoy this project. And if I get to code G code, then I'm happy for the day. Nobody enjoys going through G code line by line like I do. So there you go. Those are just bolted on the back. And this whole dude kind of sets on here like this over those screw holes. It has an allowance for that bigger screw in the back. Can't see where I'm pointing. You don't need to see the extruders anymore anyway. Right there. So it snaps on like that. And then we can kind of situate it with a zip tie. And there should be some big ones in the kit. Absolutely, Bill. You just let me know. You let me know what you need. I'm here for you. There's a Jamie in that X-Driver. There's like an R and an M, and they're smashed together, and it's hard to read. But let's just say Jamie, thank you very much for the sub. What are you doing, Zip Tie? Let's try your friend here. I was going to make a joke that Prusa sent over a whole bunch of Prusament for me to use on this project. All I had to do was send him some money. That zip tie might require just a little bit more length that I would like to have than this one's going to give me. I'm going to go to a little bigger zip tie for that. I could go the old 2 zip tie method, but that's not needed. Well, this one actually might not have any more teeth than that one. I used to have one of those zip tie guns. You ever have one of those? They were kind of handy occasionally. Mostly it just broke the zip ties though. You should see your Prusa Mint bill. It probably looks a lot like mine. I know since Printed Solid I've always bought quite a bit of Filamentum filament, but it was kind of hard to get there for a while because Filament One stopped selling it. So then when Dave got it, my bill, Dave Printed Solid, shouldn't assume everybody knows who I'm talking about. When they got it, my bill, yeah, got a little large. Okay, that should be more than zip tied than we need. Okay. So, let's throw... Nice, Ben hooked you up, huh? That's sweet. That Ben's a good dude. Just gonna kind of toss these all under this same one that I'm using for my tubes. This is gonna have to do. We're gonna have to do something here. This thing's gonna be a monster. Now I guess we're ready to go ahead and set up the pipe. So what's the camera look like? So the 4 carriage is going to be exactly like the 2 Y pipe. The 4 Y pipe is going to be exactly the same. It's going to go on here. One tip I am going to give you when you do this is throw these down here on here. Make sure that tube is lodged in there, and then kind of hook that with your thumbnail or something, and then pull up on it a bit, just so that coupler is all the way to the outside of the pipe, so it doesn't move around left or right. It just gives it's just a lot nicer fit that way. But do that with all of them. I was trying to eliminate as much slop as possible. I also kind of want to put this zip tied together as well, because it does kind of go left and right a bit as you're printing. I thought about printing a hanger for this pipe that kind of went around the fan shroud down here to keep it straighter. I might still do that. This will keep it a bit straighter. And I want to get these out of the way too. It'll hold it nicely. Right on. Chad sub. Thank you very much for the sub, Chad. All right. So, with the existing Bowden tubes that we have now, I am not going to change anything. I'm just going to make the same one left and right what I had. So I had 0 over here on the left one, on the bottom rung. Hopefully you can see that. And then 1 over on the bottom rung on the right. And then we'll get a couple more pieces of tube for those other 2. Guess I can put this up here. And there was I don't know if how many of you follow me on Twitter, but Bill did put out a tweet earlier this week. I'm going to do a PSA at this time about that tweet. But please, kids, do not cut your PTFE tube with a set of side cutters. Use a razor blade or your filament cutter or something like that. because it's just going to pinch it, and it's not going to work. It's just, you're just being really mean to your PTFE tube at that point. So don't do that. I'm just going to try to keep kind of the same radius I got going here. In fact, I think I'm going to do, I got 0, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to do the same thing, kind of left and right here. We're just going to match left and right. It's real and it can be stopped. Only by you. That's good. Slow and steady. There's a billion different handy 3D printed PTFE cutting jigs out there on multiple sites. If you need to cut a lot, grab one of those. Just don't pinch it. It's just not right. It's not right. Exactly. Those cutting jigs are phenomenal. They work great. And there's one for like every type of box cutter blade, straight blade. There's a million of them out there. Go find yourself one. All right, I'm just going to throw this on here as kind of a keeper. I did not burn up anything yet. Yes, CapTube has a kit that comes with your cutter. It's the only cutter you should ever need, unless you cut a whole lot of tube. It's well worth whatever they get for it. So the monster lives. We have tubes and wires and everything going everywhere, and we don't have tight radiuses, and everything looks pretty good. Land a GPJ subscribe. Thank you very much for the sub. Let's pick up a little bit here. I can put all of these in after a moment. I guess we can get this print off of here. I found out something. So this is the Ender 3 that I was doing kind of the Ender 3 walkthrough. Oh, I shouldn't have thrown that in there. But anyway, the Ender 3 walkthrough videos with, and I didn't realize it because I haven't done a whole lot of big prints on it. You know, fair size, but nothing out close to the edge. Well, I was trying to push my wipe tire out to the edge, and just this back corner is pretty low. And I mean, I had it way out there, right? And it was super low. I couldn't get it to stick. But then, you know, I was trying to adjust it, trying to get it to stick well. So now I've got the center adjusted so that it sticks way too well. So getting the prints off is kind of a chore. This one does have the flexi sheet. If you have one of these BuildTak flexi sheets, like, well, BuildTak-esque flexi sheets, after you've used them for a while, it's going to stick anyway, especially when it's a really small print. But, you know, you can still try to give it a shot. And this stuff is so on there. There we go. We did pretty well. You call it fake tack. You like to wipe tower in between the part and the left side button. I tried it over there, and it worked. It seemed like it worked out pretty well. I continued to use it to the right so that I could test to see how much stringing I was getting in between the click and the tower. If we come up with a, you know, if we have a final, you know, gold standard profile for Prusa Slicer, maybe we'll just switch it over there by default. That would probably keep a lot of problems from happening to other users if we did put it over there. I say we. I shouldn't say we. I should say Bill. I'm just testing things. I'm just using this kit as it was sold to me. I'm just I am not a developer for 3D Chameleon, but I am a connoisseur. So that's where we're going to leave that. So I've got a little bit of red left. That'll do okay for now. I got a really, really loud pink. The other one. Oh, I want to try this one. I've never had their royal blue, so we're gonna check out the royal blue. I don't know if the royal blue's a new color or not. This is the first time I've seen it. When I went to buy Prusa Mint, that's the first time I'd seen it on the site. I'm kind of looking forward to checking this one out. BMG Arrow on AliExpress. No, I have not seen that. It sounds interesting. What is that? Is it some sort of like hybrid, like Titan Arrow heatsink BMG combo thingy? I'd have to take a look. Looks like Hi-Fi Blue. It doesn't have any sparkle in it. It's pretty close to the same type of color, but I don't believe it has any glitter. It does not. So the Hi-Fi Blue, you're going to get the sweet protopasta glitter. Did I use all the spool holders? I've got just random spool holders sitting around here. YouTube, you won't get banned, but YouTube, it won't let a lot of links through. You could send the link, you can put the link, and then do like a .com or whatever at the end. It might let it through. It also might hold it for moderation, and then one of the mods can let it through. Give it a try, or I can try to work with you on it. I was going to say, this isn't plugged into a machine, is it? Yes, Bill, if that question was for me, yeah, it's all PLA. I haven't jumped up to anything else on this one yet. To pay for the Prusa Mint shipping, it's about like that. Purging and infill. Purging and infill works pretty good. It kind of depends on, for me, using like the MMU2, kind of depends on what you want to do. I do definitely want to set up wipe objects for this. I love doing the wipe object benchies because you end up with all these crazy different benchy colors. Those are cool. So I was kind of waiting for 4-color before I started doing all that crazy stuff, but that should be fun. You will probably see a Twitter picture of a benchy armada in the near future. It's a Titan Arrow with BMG gears instead. Gotcha. That's kind of what it sounded like. But no, I have not seen that one. I'll search it though. Uh-oh, my filament end got away. There's a tangle in the making. Ricky Tanner's here. He just got done mowing. It's hot as it can be here today, Ricky. So if it's as hot out there by you, take a break, man. It's ridiculous out there. I don't really like heat all that much. Polymer linear rails from I guess nice. So I'm feeding all the filament. You can see these tubes again. I'm feeding all of these, all the filaments that we're going to feed in. I'm going to readjust these. They're about an inch away from that coupler, which is actually too close, but the loading sequence will take care of all that. So just put them about an inch away and you're good. That will make sure that you have more than enough oomph when it creates that first load on the end of the filament for you. Yeah, it would be nice someday to see a Prusa vent US warehouse, for sure. I looked it up on Amazon. Some of those people are getting like $70 a roll. Once in a great while, you'll see a batch of it on Amazon that's actually from Prusa, but not often enough. All right. We are loaded, switches are on, tubes are on. I think we're ready to go. Need some juice. And I'm just, for this test, I'm just going to load up the same one that I showed you with just the color squares and get this filament out of my way for a second. I don't know if you guys want to watch that, but I'm just going to, in fact, I don't even think I extracted all four of those colors. I think I just grabbed a couple. Well, there's where we did the Mario one. I think it's called MMU test. It seems like I download things over and over and over. What was the MMU test block? It was all my STLs. I guess I could just throw in 4. Oh, that's why. It's because I got a Thingiverse download that was just a number and not the name. I forgot that's a... No, don't do that. No. 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 Flash Paint gets really grabby about my files. Alright. Scan this. And then we'll grab these 4. Yes, please. And we should have extruder 1, 2, 3, 4. But not in the correct direction. I would like the numbers to be right. 1, 3, 4, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to move this a bit. And I think we should be good. I'm going to slice it. I've run into some issues with... I'm going to grab my SD card here. I know you can't see that. I've run into some issues with this printer dropping the serial connection. And I know it has to be something up with the board, because it does it on Octoprint, it does it on Windows. I was trying to use Octoprint to to do the testing just because it's a lot easier, but I would come down here and it'd be stalled out in the middle of a print. So, yeah, I stopped doing that. So I'm very curious to see what it's going to do. I really, at this point, I really don't care what extruder it's going to grab on the switches. I just kind of want to see it work and see which one it picks in what way. Like what switch combination is going to make it do one thing or another. These are both out. Let's just make everything out. Everything's out all the way. So let's just see what it's actually going, what the process is going to be for this. All right, and what can you see? It's heating. This was the important part that we didn't get last time. I wasn't up to temp when I was trying to do the initial load sequence, so it would just start. It would start at the unload sequence, and that's not going to work. But we got all that fixed up. I'm cleaning up while we're waiting for this to start. Now, so it homed, and you're going to see it jump out 10. That's so it'll depress that switch. Now it's going to feed in. Now it's on extruder number 2, technically. But does that sequence allow it to load enough to actually get it in the extruder? We're going to find out. Because right now, I'm guessing it probably thinks it's on 1 or 0. So my wipe tower was far enough that it made it actually register one of these switches. So it's going to have we're going to have to start in a position where it starts on the 0 bank, I believe. Because the other load sequence is going to be a lot longer, right? If you had to go through the initial load sequence, Bill, and you wanted to load 2 or 3, the top ones, that load sequence that had to be a lot longer, right? Or is that 100, 155 good enough for all of them? Because that one definitely did not load that one far enough. $250 should be good for all. Okay. Well, then we have something else amiss. I am going to move that wipe tower just a bit. Okay, so we've moved the wipe tower. Now what I'm going to do is make sure that we are on the extruder that I think it's going to be on when we start printing. So I'm going to go to control. Actually, I'm going to have to preheat again. And then We'll wait for that for a second. Start with the left button in, okay? Well, I'm going to figure out which one goes where here. Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's a helpful process for people. But so I'm going to preheat. So it went to extruder 2, the second bank, the first one, and it did the load sequence, but it wasn't near long enough to get it down to the hot end. So when it pulled it back, it was way too far out. But like I say, it might be thinking incorrectly. So here's what we're going to do. So control, motion, and oh no, I don't want to go to control. I want to go to prepare. Move axes. I'm going to do E, and I'm going to move the extruder by 10 millimeters. And which one turns? Okay, so that is. So that's what happened. So I need to flip the motor cable that's actually in the opposite direction. So I'm going to hit this switch because I went forward and it went backwards. So that one is now going forward in that direction. But that doesn't make any sense. Because the other one is fine. You manually go through the back to the switches. Yeah, so I've got one that's turning in the opposite direction. And it just so happens that it started with the one that's in the opposite direction. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. I was just going to go through each one, right? Okay. I need a piece of paper. We'll figure this out here. So, okay. Okay. And I'm just going through these one by one here. That was number 2. Right? Yep. Yep. And then this one should be in. Yeah. So, in. So these two are actually flipped around. And then that's going to take some thought. Yes, permanent marker is where it's at. I mean, I think that's exactly what we're going to have to do is put this on here to give us the combination, the correct combination for this escape room of a chameleon. So one more time. I got everything in. That is extruder 1. These two in, this one out. See, that's extruder 3. And I would expect that to have switched to the other bank. So I think one of these cables is split. I think maybe I got one of the cables crossed. And you have to remember too, Bill, that I'm doing this from memories of watching your video. So those all go to that switch. And these second two go to that switch. But the way I was thinking that would work is that this switch would just switch in between these two, because that's the way it should work. One in each bank. Okay. So that's my flipped one. Of course, I moved that back. I gotta talk to Ron, the Happy Extruder, and see how he's doing with his. He's pretty sharp when it comes to this stuff. See what that buys us. So many button clicks. We'll get there. That's how you turn the turbo on, man. That's the go button. I did do that right? Yep. All right. One more time. Okay. So that one is turning in the wrong direction. So I have it all mapped out, but 0 is turning in the wrong direction. Make life easier. What? It's because, no, those are straight cables. I didn't flip the flip cable. Flip the printer over. Flip everything except certain things, and then you'll get demonetized. Chris just became a subscriber. Thank you very much, Chris. Probably made this a lot harder than it needed to be. But hey, what are you gonna do? I've already had a couple of offers for money for doing somebody's 3D Chameleon setup for them, which I declined because I don't even know how to do mine. But I think a few users have struggled a bit. Eric, thank you very much for the sub. Sounds like a good business opportunity. It could be. Live Chameleon setup help. I think there's business in that. Or Prusa Slicer setup help. I think that's more accurately what they need. Okay. So all of the buttons out should get me where I need to go. Eccentric Nut, what is up? I haven't seen you in a while. Struggled is a word for it. Sandro, thank you very much for the sub. Perfect. All switches out are 0. All switches in should be 1, and it is. Left switch in, right switches out should be 2, and it is. Left switch out, right switches in should be 3, and it is. We're in much better shape this time. All right. Let's go again. I didn't realize it was late as it was. Let's see if this thing's going to take off, and then we'll revisit this a little later. The angled spool holder, it was I think it's Chuck. Chuck made that mount, and it's just the stock arm. I just used his L bracket. I think that was Chuck's deal. I heard it successfully load. It loaded number 3, which it's fine, whichever one it would like to load. That's where we left it, so that's when it should have loaded. All right. It's purging the red that I used last time. It's working on blue right now. It's kind of going a purple color, which is actually a pretty cool color. We have extra laying here. We have made it to blue. It has done my blue square. We are cooling down the end of the filament so that we can pull it back out. Number 3 is out. We are loading number 1, which is the red one. Which is the sequence it should have actually went in if we were on number, if we would have set it to number 0. Good old Purge Tower. Our red square is complete. Now we're going to go through our unload again. I am running at 200. This is all Prusa PLA. I'm running at 200. I tried to jump down to 195. It doesn't seem to like 195 very much. There you go. Now we loaded number 3 again. So I still don't have the sequence quite right. Oh, you might be right. Let's see what it does on this next one. Then we'll know for sure. Just another G-code tweak away. So pay extra close attention to what it's going to do here. So we hit that switch. Yep, we didn't quite make it. It's a little further out than that. No big deal, we have to tweak the G-code. But I was expecting that. That's why I wanted to get the 4 color going. So anyway, the point of this stream, I wanted to give you a recap of what I did after we installed the 2 color. I wanted to get the 4 color going. I do intend to do another stream where I recap what we did here. I want to go through the wires and make sure I got a better handle on what I actually completed here by flipping some of these around. I will recap that again in another stream. And I have to widen the G-code just a bit so that I can make it all the way over to this switch. I've probably retightened that belt and brought it out a little further than I should have. Probably just need to move a little bit more this way so that I can tag it. That shouldn't be a big deal. I'm sure I will have some 4-color prints on Twitter very, very soon if you would like to check them out. Chris Riley 3D if Twitter is a thing that you do. And I think we're pretty close here. I think we're going to start getting some pretty cool prints very, very soon. But anyway, thank you for everybody joining the stream. I'm going to go have some food. Thanks for all the tips that came in. It's always appreciated to see everybody come to these. But there will be more Chameleon info this week. I know I said that last week, but there will be more info this week. We're almost there. So stay tuned. I will see you all very soon. And have a good evening, day, afternoon, whatever it might be for you. We'll see you very soon.